All right, so today after I left the park, and as some of you have pointed out, I didn't actually do any fishing, but I got in my car and I drove to Panera. Not my favorite restaurants, but definitely my favorite salad out of any entry level place like that, any fast food style place. So I walked in, and in front of me there was a very attractive, pale, tall girl. And of course, it was the first thing that caught my eye. It's paleness all the way up from the feet to the top of her head. And so I kind of watched where she was sitting so I wouldn't go sit next to her because that's kind of what men do in order to make women freaked out. So I kind of went off to the side and I sat over here until she got her stuff and she left. She kind of just looked at me and turned her nose up in the air and walked out. And so I went over and I sat where she was sitting next to the counter so I could wait for my salad to come up. And as I did that, I noticed a very old man. He had to be probably in his 80s, not a spring chicken by any stretch of the imagination. And he walked up to the counter. He talked to the girls at the counter. Then he teased the men that work behind the counter as well. And then he did something very unexpected. Something that I actually did my psychology 290 research methods class on is he invaded my personal space. So I had my phone and my wallet over by my left hand on the side of me. And we're talking about a room with, I don't know, maybe 30, 50 tables that were all empty. And the old man comes over to me and he sits down. And of course, like any normal human being, I grabbed my wallet, my phone, and I scooted it over to right in front of me as to give him his space since he asked me if he could sit there. And the first thing he says to me is, I'm retired. And then I got a whiff of old man smell that was really prominent. And I said, well, that's good for you. And then he's like, all you have to do is make a lot of money and retirement's really good. And I look at him, and this guy doesn't know who he's sitting next to, right? No one knows when they're sitting next to Millennial Steam. And so I reach over, I kind of turn my head at him, and I say, they're going to put me in the box for my retirement. And then he looks at me puzzled, right? You know, he's a retired old man and doesn't understand what I just said. And so he says to me, just make a lot of money. And at that point, I said, good day, enjoy your food, I'm out. That's what's wrong with America. Is that used to be at his age, he's a boomer or older, that he has all the money he needs to live comfortably until they put him into the pine box community. But for people like us, we're never going to see that life. We're not going to see the way he's living right now. We're going to work until the bitter end, until we're that little old lady at Wells Fargo and we start to smell in the office. With that said, let's get into today's talking points. They're a little bit different. It's something someone left this comment, and of course I put it into the machine, reworked it a few times, and this is the outline that it gave me. So let's get into talking point number one. The emotional toll of forced miles and low wage jobs. So I've been talking about this for years because it's happened to me for my entire life, where your smile at work is considered part of your uniform. If you're not smiling, and this is verbatim, if you're not smiling, millennial steam, I will get someone who will. Wearing that smile at work is as much a part of your uniform as anything else you do here. And I just looked at him like, you can't force people to smile. No, you can't force them to smile, but you can force them to work somewhere else if they're going to come to work and look like that. I was in another, I believe, phone job interview with a person. This was a long, long time ago, and I was looking through jobs and calling uh, to see what was available. And the guy on the phone says, Do you have any emotional problems? Any relationship problems? Any reason why you might come to work and not be in a good mood?" And I was like, what kind of question is that? But if you've ever submitted the application to a Walmart in your life, you'll understand that it's not a job application. It's a personality test. And this is where it differentiates between what they want and who they're willing to hire, because every application gets a score. I don't know how it's weighed in certain areas, but as a person who's had a personality psychology class, I could see the questions. Personality tests aren't black and white. They're on a spectrum. And they want to see, because they can get anyone to do the work at Walmart, right? Anyone can stock shelves, anyone can push shopping carts, and anyone can take returns because they made it so easy that it's scanning a barcode and then scanning the receipt and then scanning the item. That's all doing returns at Walmart is. So they know they can get anyone to do that. But what they're looking for is the person with the right personality. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, they're not really looking for qualified people. They know that qualified people wouldn't apply to that job unless they absolutely had to. And that's where the desperation comes in. And that's where this application that you submit with hundreds of questions on it, you have to lie. Because if you're ever honest in a job interview or on an application about the way that you carry yourself, they're going to determine whether or not you are a good fit. And it's not about you, the worker, it's you, the person. And every time you go into a job interview, remember that it's not your qualifications they're looking at. Everyone, there are thousands of people that are either as qualified or better qualified than you are for any job. But they need to know whether or not you're going to come to work in a good mood. Because at a certain point, we all sour on work. I I didn't like work from day one. So anytime that I have to put in one of those applications, I know that I need to not answer them honestly. You never answer anything honestly, especially when it comes to talking to a psychologist. A psychologist is always looking to do one thing: determine what's wrong with you in the worst case scenario. They don't care where that leads you or how much health insurance you have or whether or not you can afford it. They're looking for a diagnosis, and so are crappy jobs. They're looking for the right person who's not going to come and leave. Because I was reading one of the comments, and one really stood out to me above this one about a person who took a job working at a Walmart, or excuse me, at a Kmart, which I had mentioned was my first time in my entire life that I had applied to a job and been hired. I think I was going to push shopping carts. But like this guy, I just, my family wouldn't let me, and I wasn't looking forward to it. So I never ended up, I got hired, but I never started. But he said that he came into work one day, he was a night stalker, and that his manager saw him pull up and then he left because he couldn't stand the idea of working there. And that is very true. I mean, I have been standing next to people while I worked at Walmart who literally said to me, "I can't work here. This is too depressing. I can't do this job because I don't feel good about being here." And that's exactly what happened to this person. He came back the next day and the manager didn't even question it because management knows the kind of people that are going to be able to stay in those jobs. The Kroger's where I worked up the street still has many of the people that I worked with 15 years ago still working in that store. And to quote a person who still works in that store, this is what they had to say. And this person's a little lower on the spectrum of overall, what goes on inside your coconut. And this was a few weeks ago when the Starbucks girl left. He said to me, I told him that the Starbucks girl was leaving, and she's the only beautiful and smart employee inside that whole store. And I told him she's leaving, and he just looks down. He puts his head down and he says, everyone that's any good leaves. And I looked at him and I said, you can leave too. And he just said, where am I going to go? And that's coming back to this first talking point. Workers are expected to maintain a cheerful demeanor. That is the hardest part about working retail. You are required to maintain a cheerful demeanor, even when your work is humiliating as it gets. Right around the holidays, you're expected to cheer up and wear holiday specific attire. Sometimes they had you wear lights. Sometimes they had a hat that would light up with Christmas lights on it. And I was like, you know what? No. They expected us to practically get into a chicken costume when I worked at another store. And they told me that I wasn't a team player because I wouldn't get into the chicken costume. And the day that I saw the general manager of that store get into the costume, I was like, you know what? They really do expect minimum wage workers to maintain a cheerful demeanor and a positive attitude at all times, regardless of how they feel about their work, how they're doing in their personal life, and how they're struggling financially. Because Walmart had that really ugly story a few years ago where they were having a food drive for the employees inside of the store. And a lot of people have forgotten this story, but it is very true that the employees inside that store are suffering more than you can imagine. And it's just the strain of the job. So, moving on to my second talking point, which I'm going to explore this a little more: emotional labor. The workers are expected to suppress their feelings, never show frustration, and constantly prioritize customer satisfaction over their own well being. This emotional labor is what takes its true toll on you as an employee because it's constant. You can't come into work after you broke up with your significant other, after you had a rough night of drinking, or your parents kicked you out onto the street. They expect you to come into work feeling like a very optimistic, positive person. And let me tell you, if you're living in the parking lot, if you're living in your car while you're going to your job because it doesn't pay you enough to afford an apartment working at your current job, and there's thousands upon thousands, I would say hundreds of thousands of people in America who have been priced out of basic housing. Why? Because it's not for people anymore. When an upgraded apartment costs $3,000 a month, how is a person who makes $2,000 total a month working full time supposed to afford that? And the correct answer to that is you're not. Because just like with anything in life, they don't make the prices high on things because they're worth that much. When they raise the price on anything, and this is now going to include food, which remember I say is a basic human right, but they increase the price of things in order to make certain that only certain people can have those things. A McMansion can cost 50 times more and a billionaire can afford it. Rent can go up by $200 for the proletariat and they can't afford to pay their monthly bill anymore. That's how you keep an area exclusive. Exclusive transportation, exclusive zip codes, exclusive jobs. Now, I've said this many times on this channel, but you don't go to Indeed to find a living wage job. It just doesn't happen. Living wage jobs, living comfortably at $250,000 a year, isn't going to be hourly work. Hourly work is for the people we don't like, the non exclusive people in our society, those people that have been marginalized in every conceivable way that our society deems it necessary in order to keep you over there. Rich people don't like being around poor people. They have disdain for their butlers, their maids, the pool guy, even the tow truck driver and the mechanic. They don't like these people. They're necessary evils that they have to use, just like their workers. All corporations don't like their workers. In fact, I had one of the teachers at where I work say that to me. We were walking down the hallway after she had submitted her resignation, and she says to me, Evil Corp hates its workers. And this is the nicest, sweetest person in the whole world. She just emanates sweetness. And when someone that nice has something that ugly to say about their employer, that speaks volumes to me because it goes to show that even the average proletariat understand there's a fight that happens every day where Evil Corp wants to extract your booty and you want to keep covering it up. And unfortunately, Evil Corp always wins. No matter how much you turn your rear to get it out of the way, Evil Corp somehow manages to squeeze it in. And they extract your labor. They force you to do things you don't want to do, like go to work. Let's face it, every one of us is going to have to do that struggle tomorrow morning to get in our Promobile and go to a place that does nothing but hurt us financially and emotionally. Mainly financially. Emotionally, we cry every morning when we hold our ankles, but again, what are we supposed to do? Bologna's $9. So, and let's move on to my next talking point because I'm already running out of time. These things go so quickly for me. You guys don't believe it. For me, talking and making a lecture or a video, whatever you want to call it, it happens so naturally that I have to keep balancing the clock because I don't know when to stop talking about something. So let's move on to bullet point number 3. The financial stress that never leaves. When you go home at night and you come home and you look at the bills that you can barely afford, and there's a constant worry about money is always present. And even when you're supposed to be sleeping, what are you thinking about at night? By the way, that was Mallow that just messaged me right there. You guys heard that. When you're supposed to be sleeping at night, what are we doing at night? We're rolling around in our sleep thinking about two things: not having enough money and how do I make more money? And I ask myself this all the time. Yesterday, I was typing into the machine over and over again. What I talked about this morning in my video are the thoughts in my head at night when I'm supposed to be comfortably sleeping. I can't because there's that always that financial stress that never leaves and it billows up inside of your stomach. I get it as stress. I call them stress stomach aches all day because the corporation is squeezing you by requiring more productivity while at the same time your productivity isn't being rewarded. You're being crunched. And when you ask management about it, all they ever say is you're bad with money. That's what I've heard my entire life. Even McDonald's had a brochure for their employees on how much money they should be spending for things. And when Evil Corp decides that you're just going to spend $300 a month on rent because according to how much they pay you, that's how much money you can afford to pay off for rent. So in their minds, if you're not making it on what they're paying you, the natural response to that is it's your own fault because they are assuming that you're living at home. Because for most jobs, let's face it, if you're not living at home, you're not making it. So that that stress, that financial stress builds up inside of you to the point where you can't do that job anymore. And most of us are either there already or We don't know what to do. That's why I make these videos a lot of the times, because I just don't know what to do. Because I, I'm at my wit's end. Hourly work, if you stop and calculate what hourly work needs to look like, and then you look at facts, there's a big disconnect between performance and pay. And I'm not saying every job has to pay a lot of money, but every job should pay enough for you not to be worried about food and shelter. So, moving on to toxic positivity, because I just crossed the 20-minute mark. So, this is what I put. Today I went to the park and I was making fun of how hard it is to get food without a job. The fish are in the lake, but the fish don't want to turn into your dinner. Instead, I was looking at the food trucks the whole time because that's what we've become. Gaining resources from your environment used to be what we did as hunter gatherers. And then we became a society, and rather than hunting and gathering, you had to go sell your labor to Evil Corp, and that was the only way you were going to eat. And now they don't even want you to make enough money for you to eat or have a place to live. So now we can't go home to our cave woman that's been gathering all day, and we just bring a lump of meat and she cooks it. It just doesn't work that way. It is extremely hard, I would say impossible, to be alive anymore without having to work every day. Unless you have something that generates income. If you lay golden eggs every morning and you go and you take your golden egg to the pawn shop and you sell it every day for food and shelter, that's one way. But extracting it in a legal way in which it is possible for you to live comfortably has become impossible, or has always been impossible, or became impossible, because I don't see it. Today I monetized the channel for the first time, the new channel, because I hadn't seen a penny, other than, thank God you guys you guys dropped some donos into the live stream today, but I haven't seen a penny from doing this. And that's really hard to do because there's over 100 hours now of me talking on this channel, and I haven't seen one red cent from this corporation. I mean, it may have been my fault for not clicking the little button, but by the time that you guys end up listening to this, which I don't know when it's going to go up, I would have made 15,000 views just in the past day or so. That's a lot of views. That's a lot of millennial steam out there in the real world. But with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's live stream. And I've got to go to the gym real quick. And then I'm going to come back and make today's actual video. So I will see you guys in the next video. Stay wrinkled and stay safe.